And welcome back. In the last example, we showed you how to pass in arrays by passing their names into functions to allow things to actually be used to print out the stuff that's there. If you recall from our previous discussion in functions way back when, if we had a function, say, well, add, and we passed in an integer value, this was all passed by value, right? That was the way we declared it. So if we came down here and wrote a function for add and we gave it a value and we did something like x plus equals 5 and then we printed it out, we could see that in the function this value changed. But if we were up here, and let's just make a temporary value called temp, and we'll give it a temporary value of, say, 12. There we go. If I was to come in here and I was to call add and pass in temp, and then print out temp, and I'm just going to briefly take out the array stuff, so we'll watch it all again. If I was to do this very nicely, the way this is done, this add int passes in a pass by value variable into the int, which we now call x. We add 5 to x, we print it out, and when we return from that function and we print out temp, we should have an expectation of what temp should be. And if you want to pause the video and just double check it, see what you get. Yep, temp should be 12 here, and up here it should be 17. Let's make sure. And there you go. When I called add, x has changed, but when I come back into main, it's not changed. Well, that's what's called pass by value. So just showing you how that works again to remind you that what happens with arrays is a little bit different. Arrays are a little bit different than standard values. So let's say, for example, we don't want to use this void add anymore, so we'll delete it all out. Let's say, for example, we wanted a load names. And we want to pass in a standard string array and a size. So if we create this load thing, which is kind of like our add thing, and we want to make a function to do that for us, so we're going to pass in names with a size s. And we're going to come up here and we're just going to kind of do a little copy pasta. Drop it in. Death by copy paste. So here what we have is a function that will load a string that we get into an array called names. If this works the same way we think it works before, if I replace this with load names, pass in names and size, and take out the block comment that lets us run. If this works the way we're used to thinking about it, what you should see is that the names wouldn't change. They would stay blank. Let's watch. Bob, Jim, Steve, 90, 80, 70. Why am I? Oh, that's why I called it 3 times. I need to just do this. Pardon me. Let's stop this. I'm going to do this outside the loop. I got my loop inside my array. We'll try it again. Boop. Bob, Jim, Jane, 90, 80, 70, 90. And look, Bob, Jim, and Jane stuck around. That's because arrays, when you pass them, act like pass by reference. They're kind of a pointer styled variable because the name itself is a reference to the very first memory location, and the index that you give it is the location as to where that actual memory is from that base address, either right there or on down the way. So when you pass in an array uh, to a function, you are fundamentally passing it by reference, which means I could replace this whole for loop with a whole nother load grades thing here and let it loop through, and I would fill both my names and my grades inside functions that are being used as pass by reference. So that's just something to be aware of, that if you wanted to make things so that they are passable and modifiable, you just do it the same way you used to do pass by value. However, if you don't want someone to change something, if you want someone, for example, like in the print, to not change anything that's up here, what you need to do is declare them as constants so that when you pass them in, this function way down here in print will get the array and treat it as if it was an array of constants. So that way, if you made a mistake and you wanted to do something, say silly, like, oh, I don't know, just to show. You'll see now that all of a sudden it's telling you that it's a read-only variable. So this passing by constant is effectively, when it comes to arrays, turning them into pass by value. It says, here's a copy of it. In reality, it's not how it's working, but that's the way you can think of it mentally, that constant arrays say they're unchangeable. Arrays, just regular arrays, are passed by reference, and that's what happens when you do that. You actually pass them in. So these functions that you see here, like printing, very common function to have. Loading, very common function to have. As a matter of fact, you would even see in here, we saw it in the previous edition of functions, how you would use a function to get a value and validate it. Oftentimes here, if you had like loading grades, you would call that validation function to get a grade, pass it back in, and load it into your function so that when it returns, it's done. So we're starting to learn how and see, hopefully, how to stack functions on top of each other to make the whole program more usable. And then your main program consists of load grades, print grades, or load names, load grades, print your information, and you're done. Or load the name, load the grades, find the average, find the min, find the max, print a report. But we're calling functions here, and all of the functions sit as prototypes and as implementations above and below your program to make it easier for you to see what's going on. Anyway, hope you understood that, and if you have any questions, as always, hit me up, and I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great day.